Well, given that we have a quorum, I will call the meeting of the Ramsey County Home Rule Charter Committee to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at that? Any revisions, amendments, changes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second, approving the minutes. All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Next item of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes needed to the agenda?
I see the changes.
Let me look at it real quickly. Grab the one thing.
I think we pretty much use the same agenda for every meeting for the last 6, so.
Review and amend, open discussion. I think it's fine.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right,
Second.
motion to approve the agenda in a second. All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. So then we'll move on to open discussion, and we'll jump to Adam. Did you have a chance to actually talk directly with Carrie? Do you want to talk about what her changes are?
I did, yeah. She came in over lunchtime and I just happened to be here. Like she says here, she said she reviewed the whole charter, didn't find anything that raised concerns on how it would function. In terms of things jiving with one another. However, after reading the charter, she had a couple recommendations. She said that wording of plenary power, she thinks is something that we should have in there, simply because it's kind of a catch-all for doing, it's just a legalese term
To ensure that we
say,
have
to ensure you have the power to enact the ordinances and the resolutions that are part of the home rule, basically. It's basically just a sentence that says, hey, if the charter says you can do it, then you can do it. If the charter doesn't say you can do it, you can't do it, I guess basically is what she was saying. Yeah, give the effect of express and implied powers granted in this charter.
Yeah, so basically the express powers, the things that we listed, implied powers, basically what I think, my interpretation of it would be, if for some reason something was omitted but would fit in, would fit within the bounds of the scope of the charter, reasonably speaking, then it's not beyond the charter to enact it. Sorry, that was probably a lot of.
That's how I would understand it. Plus, I think that the clause that she's talking about here basically gives you the ability, so if, say, the state changes something in the future in century code to how a charter can function, then having that sentence gives you the Board of County Commissioners basically the ability to do what the state made the change on or something like that, you know? That's a catch-all phrase is what it is basically. It's legalese for saying that if the charter, yeah, it's a, express or implied. And I don't know where, let's see here, so
eliminating that sentence.
Yeah, it would change the Board of County Commissioners to the new Board of County Commissioners sentence.
so it would just be basically just add in, just take out that second sentence in Article 1 and add in the sentence she has underlined.
Right.
So it would,
I'll make a motion that we
To adopt it as.
to adopt that.
yeah, it's a little different, but it's not horribly different by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
I'm gonna trust the lawyers.
That's my thoughts on this one too, I would
I
say.
trust Carrie, so
we should adopt it.
I'll second that we adopt that change language.
Okay, so there is a motion and a second to strike sentence 2 of Article 1 and replace it with the Board of Commissioners shall have plenary power to enact ordinances and resolutions to carry out and give effect to the express and implied powers granted in this charter and to prescribe the functions of government to be performed under this charter. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries and the charter is amended as stated. Looks like the next thing that Carrie had some thoughts on was Article 4.
Yeah, and this was, just a suggestion of hers. She said, just something she thought of when she was reading through it. And she said she's not necessarily in favor or opposed to what she has written here, just a thought. Would we like to have the ability to add a county manager at some point in the future, like an executive type setup? And I think we kind of touched on that a little in the past, that I don't know if I don't even, if you would have to have an express office of a county manager in a home rule charter, because we don't say in here that we hire the tax director, or we hire Kevin as the as our transportation highway superintendent, but it's something that the county commission deems necessary to function the government, so we hire that
Is
person.
it implied? I don't know.
Well, and the other thing is,
Section 4 is, Article 4 is just saying these people will be elected. A county manager would never be an elected position.
Yeah,
The only time I could ever see using a county, and some counties do it, like Cass County has a county manager. But when you have all the elected positions, especially in a county the size of ours, I don't foresee why you'd use a county manager unless those elected positions ever went away and you had a streamline of the government where you have just that one person that's kind of like the city manager, like we have over here.
I don't think that that's necessary.
I don't necessarily think it is either.
well, and I don't think it's necessary simply because if it's gonna be worded such that it takes a majority vote, am I reading that incorrectly? Is it the Board of Commissioners by a vote of majority on the commission, or a vote of the
That's a good question.
public? Because if she implies that it's a vote of the public, then there would be no difference in appointing a county manager than amending the charter to
To
include
an
a county
elected
manager.
official, yeah. Well, and in my mind, like I said, I don't think it needs to be in that section, because we're basically saying all the elected officers shall remain elected and they shall keep the terms they have now. A county manager, if it's ever added, isn't gonna become an elected position. It's gonna be, hey, the county commission says, hey, a county manager would be useful.
Right.
So then we decide we're gonna hire a county manager, we'll write a job description and we'll advertise for one.
Right.
Like I said, it's no different than if we decided all of a sudden, hey, the tax director doesn't have enough work, and the emergency manager doesn't have enough work, they're not elected, we're gonna combine duties. That's just a decision made, and that's why we put that clause out front. It's an implied power that the commission has the ability to add jobs or staff or whatever, as part of the game, so I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Is there anyone that would like to see it included, or can we move on?
I don't see any need for it myself.
And I mean, I'm not saying that a county manager might not be a good idea at some point,
Sure.
but I don't think it needs to be the charter.
Yeah, and in my mind, if there comes that day, it would be just as simple to amend the charter as it would be to
Yeah.
call a vote to
Yeah.
have one.
I agree.
Okay, so pass on that, hearing no motions in favor of it. And the next proposed change is in Article 7, succession in government. And to include that ordinances and resolutions will remain in force as the government changes, is I think what I'm reading here.
Yeah, and the question was that Carrie had is, do we have any current resolutions? Because we have ordinances. But I
I don't think it would hurt anything to include.
I don't think it would either, just in case we're missing something.
Right.
But I don't think we have any resolutions outstanding.
No,
'Cause
likely not.
We have the liquor law, or the liquor ordinance, and we have the ordinance overseeing planning and zoning, as well as a policy to remain in force would be like the comprehensive plan is a policy. But I would guess that there are probably things we have done a resolution on in the past that we would want to remain in force, that maybe are just a standing thing.
Right, and because we don't know, I don't see any problem with leaving it. I mean, it just ensures that however the county's doing business now, it continues to do business.
Well, the only thing would be, yeah, for instance, and I don't know if it would be called a policy or resolution, but in the past, as a board of county commissioners, we have decided we would ask the state water commission to run the outlets until 1446 or whatever.
Like that
47.
would be a good example.
That's not necessarily a resolution, it might be a policy, but it could be a resolution, it depends on how we've written it in the past, and in all honesty, I don't know how we've written it. So I think it would be safe to put resolution back in, just so we got our,
Covered.
i's crossed and t's dotted or whatever it's
Sure.
supposed to be called.
That would be wrong.
I don't.
So is there a motion to improve the inclusion under section 4 of Article 7, the verbiage resolutions be added to the sentences where ordinances and policies are referred?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Are there any other major changes apart from the ones that Carrie had listed, or any changes to the verbiage or the way that anything is written in the charter?
I'm trying to recall what we talked about at, not our last meeting, but when we didn't have a forum about. I forgot my notes now, what we talked about, just in visiting. I'm trying to,
Well, I think we could shorten up Article 5, initiation and referendum part. Either that or just delete it. I don't think we need, there's stuff in there we don't need, in my opinion.
What parts of it, Rodney, don't you like?
Well, I just don't like the whole thing,
Okay.
period.
no. And I think we all thought that 10 looked like it was pretty good. And we went over it. 6, 4, 6, 7, 8 are all pretty much boilerplate. Oh, and 9, I made a note too. Under section 2, we have old section 4 written there. Can we strike that? Oops. I don't think we need a motion to strike it, it's just, I'll fix it for the future.
My notes I have on the Article 5 say that remove 6, which I think we did.
What'd you say, Paul?
Oh, I was just looking back on my notes under Article 5 and I had saved Article 5.
Well, I remember we had the discussion last time simply because that was one of the questions at the meetings. Was, you know, is there concern that somebody could come up with a harebrained idea and then ask for it as a referendum or an initiative?
Is that the percentages of it?
And then, yeah, are the percentages set high enough so that we make it hard enough to, but I think the one thing that I fall back on it, and I realize that that is a possibility, I don't deny that it is a possibility, but the thing I always continue to fall back on is, in the research I've done up to this point, I haven't seen any other county that has this in it that's ever had a problem with it, where somebody's come up with some finagled, crazy idea and then it got passed by the electorate, because it still has to get passed if it's a horrible idea.
Right.
You know, and we've set actually our numbers,
Are pretty restricted.
percentages, quite a bit higher than what the other counties have in here, so we've made it so you have to go out and probably get 750 signatures. And if it's a really crazy idea,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not possible, but
But even if it is a really crazy idea, if that proportion of the electorate wants to see it happen, then I think that it's reasonable to have the question called at that point, no matter how crazy it is.
well, and I realize, I know where you're coming from, Rodney, that it is very verbose and it's a long section comparatively to what we have. But I just keep falling back on the concept of, if the county and the Board of County Commissioners in this situation is gonna be asking for more ability to do things, whether it's through a resolution or an ordinance or additional taxation, there has to be a way for the people to check that power. So if we pass some type of an ordinance, you know, like saying, for instance, I don't know,
Every third day is Adam Lycon Day.
yeah, well, even something that's reasonable, say, not reasonable, but something that could happen that might be construed as reasonable, like saying, everybody that lives out in the country has to clean up their property or something, and can't have old cars on it or something. You know, something like that. And people said, well, that's why I live in the country, it doesn't bother anyone, and that's just part of being out here, then people could call us on the carpet and go, that's a dumb idea.
Yeah, I think, in my view, Article 5 at least in substance, if not in the actual wording, is really important, because it really effectively checks the extra powers you're giving the county commission with powers given to the electorate.
Yeah, I just want the people to be able to say, hey, that's a horrible idea, and we think it's a horrible idea, and we want to call you on it. Because I guess I look at it this way. I'd rather have more power in the people to check the power of the 5 commissioners than give the power to the 5 people to basically spell out to everyone else, this is what you're going to do, without any ability to say, this is a bad idea. But now, could we maybe make it shorter or something and really cut it down? Possibly. I think there's ways we might be able to do that. But I gotta look at it and see what we can do here.
Well, it just seemed like 300 signatures is a pretty small number.
Well, yeah, respectively speaking though, so it's at least equal to number to 15% or 10% for referendum respectively, or 300 signatures, whichever is higher. Voting in the last office of governor. And in Ramsey County, generally speaking, we've had about 5,000 to 6,000 people, right, that vote for the gubernatorial elections. So at the minimum for a referendum, to call a question on something the board did, like an ordinance or a resolution, you're gonna need probably 500 to 600 signatures. And if you want to enact an ordinance or a resolution, you're gonna need 750 to 900 signatures. So that's, I'm not saying that's doable, of course that's doable, but it's gonna take a concerted effort to go out to Devil's Lake, or, you know, mostly Devil's Lake, and get 750 or 900 signatures.
Yeah.
And you know what, in all honesty, even if it's a harebrained idea, if you organize and you go out and you get 900 signatures, that means there's 900 people that want it on the ballot. And it's worthwhile asking the question, does the rest of the electorate want it or not want it?
That's exactly what I think.
Was it, you think it had something to do with the amount of people that spoke out against it, Rodney?
Well, that's one thought, yeah. There's a lot of people against this home rule from what I've gathered.
Or even this section?
Well, I guess, I just figure that section kind of pertains to a lot of it.
Yeah.
Well, in all honesty, I think too, Rodney, we can leave it in here for now, take it to the public hearing, and if people pick that apart and they hate it, we can adjust accordingly and take it out, we can adjust accordingly and leave it. You know, we can do a lot of different things still. I'd like to get public input on it at the public hearing and see what people really think of it.
Well, I guess I'd like to know that we're gonna get people at the public hearing.
Yes, and I completely agree. We're gonna have to advertise the living heck out of it and make sure that we get people there, and everybody you see, tell them when it is, and because I want as many people to try to pick this thing apart as is humanly possible.
Absolutely.
Because the more people...
I can't support this just the way it is, under that circumstances, because I would like to hear what people have got to say, more than just what you meet on the street and say, well, you're on that home rule, what do you think about this or that? You know, it's kind of hard to defend because we haven't got it down to where we...
And I guess I've had a totally different experience. I don't feel I've ever had to defend it. And
Well-
people have been welcome to come to any of these meetings.
Well, how many have we had? We had
But
4,
Rodney, what am I
from what I
supposed to do?
understand.
Chain people to the chairs so that they come and talk? I don't understand, you know, when you make the argument, I want people to show up. Well, me too. I want everybody to be involved in democracy. But if
Well-
they're not, what can I do about their apathy?
We didn't have a very good turnout for our meetings, 4 people. That isn't, show that they're very, very interested in it.
Well, and they might not be. And in all honesty, there might be a certain amount of people who have already made their minds up. And if they have, that's just
I guess
what
we
that's
can't
just
do
what
nothing about that.
And I guess I look at it that way, Rodney. In all honesty, it's-
I do too, because, you know, when you go to the vote, if this is on the ballot and you go to think, you're king. I mean, that's your privilege to do what you want.
well, but my whole point is that it's then our job to explain to people what it does and what it does not do.
Well,
And I don't want to convince someone to vote for it or to vote against it. If we decide to put this on the ballot, I want to say, this is what it does, this is what it doesn't do. You make your mind up. Whether you like it or not, you vote how you want to vote, but I'm just going to lay it out. This is what it will do and this is what it won't do. And if you think this is good or bad, that's your decision. I'm not gonna sell you, oh, this is the best thing, because it's not. It's gonna change how government works, but we're still gonna be a county running what we're running. But, and that's basically what I've tried to do when people have asked me questions. I've just tried to say, so far what we have, this is what it'll do. This is what it won't do. You make your mind up. And I think that's all we can do, because we can't force people to come to anything.
We can't,
And you know what, I hate to say it, but, I mean, we got an apathetic population. I mean, we had a primary, 3 weeks ago, and 18% of the electorate voted? Think about that for a second. We go vote by mail, we have a full day in the memorial building where you can come vote, and 18% of the people voted. That's insane. We make it like the easiest possible to vote in the whole state, and people still don't vote. And I realize that there wasn't a whole lot of stuff to vote on in the primary, but there's still stuff to vote on. We had a city election where you could elect, councilmen, commissioners, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's important stuff. There's park board commissioners, and people still didn't come to vote. But you know what? They won't stop complaining.
no,
But it bothers me too that people won't show up to stuff. It really truly does. But I mean, you've gone to township meetings your whole life too. How many people usually show up to those? The 3 people that are on the township board.
that's about it.
But when somebody's road goes to hell, they weren't at the meeting.
No,
They weren't there to advocate for themselves. They just want to complain. So we can't force people to show up and stuff. All we can do is just do our best to advertise the heck out of it, tell everybody we can see, and hope people come. And like I said, I want people to show up, and I want them to poke as many holes in this as possible, because I think that makes a better charter, and it makes a better document if and when it does pass. So it'll govern better for the county. But all we can do is try our best to get as many people there to try to get input as we possibly can. But I do agree to a point that, that is one of the longer sections in the charter.
But I think in some ways it kind of needs to be, because it needs to outline exactly how the process is to work.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, my question would be, let me see here. The portion where we talk about how the petitions have to be passed and what has to be said on the petition, is that portion in state statute? So we could basically pull that portion and just say, petitions shall be circulated as appointed in state statute or something like that.
But, we could potentially do that. My question is, I mean, it's one paragraph.
I know, but I'm just saying if you wanted to shorten it up a little bit.
Sure.
That could be the case. I mean, just for discussion purposes as well as maybe making the argument that it is lengthy.
I mean, because the other stuff, if we're gonna keep it in there, basically states how it's gonna work, what a referendum can be for, what an initiation can be for, when the referendum occurs, what happens, that all has to be stated in there, upon determination that such petition is sufficient, suspend the operation of any ordinance enacted by the board, except those enactments implementing public projects. And it's basically saying that we're gonna pay our debts until we're, told by the people we're not going to anymore, essentially. And then it says referendum petitions shall be filed with the county auditor not later than 30 days after adoption of the ordinance. That's pretty straightforward. Placed on the ballot at the next election occurring 45 days after the filing. So, did we change that number? I thought we did. So it would match up with how long it was going to take to get stuff on the ballot.
45 days.
I thought we were talking about changing that number to like 64 so it would match state statute. So if you wanted to get it on the primary, it would have to be, by the time the ballots were printed for the primary. Or for the general, because it's 64 days previous to the general to get on the general, or 64 days previous to the primary to get on the primary.
I don't remember that discussion.
We had that discussion, I thought we changed that, but maybe we didn't. Or we can call a special election, which preferably you don't want to do that unless you have to. I was just reading yesterday, or the day before. I think it's Jamestown, their public schools are asking for a bond issue to do some school repairs and stuff like that, and they're actually gonna have to call a special, because if they want to do this repairs starting in 2019, they have to have the election held before the 10th of October, because that's when you certify for the debt for the next, or for the mills for the next year, so they actually can't hold it on the general, they're having their election sometime, and I don't think they've set the date yet, but it's gotta be late September, or sometime in September, because they missed the primary. There's a typo here too, as of he.
Oh. Let's see. February 27th. Article 5, first 3 paragraphs with addition of 300 signatures, whichever is higher, and change 30 to 45 days.
Yeah, we made it more restrictive, that's what I recall.
Yeah.
So we went from 30 to 45.
Oh, so we did go to, but is 45 enough still? I mean, I guess you would just call it special then at that point. Because the only time that we would ever have a problem is if somebody called an ordinance into question between 64 days and 45 days, or 64 days to that next general. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because anything called before 64 days, you'd put on the primary or the general, and anything called in between there and the general, you'd have to call a special or wait for the next regularly scheduled to come around, and then you just let the ordinance sit, I suppose, if the commission decided we don't want to incur any more costs for a special election.
Right. I mean, we can change it so that it matches, I don't see any problem with that.
I guess I would take guidance from Candy on it, because the auditor's the one that has to deal with that more than anyone. Whatever her feeling is on it.
Right.
I remember having that discussion, I just didn't
Yeah.
remember exactly where we ended up at on it.
Because I think it was 30 and then we went to 45.
Now, when did we go to 45 for? What was our rationale?
Is change 30 to 45 days along with cask, and put a sentence in for cask.
Oh, there's one too that we missed.
So under state statute, are the directions of how they do this listed in there? Do we have to reiterate that under this article as well?
So I don't remember, what are the state guidelines for initiation and referral?
Well, there's two different sections talking about initiative and referral. Under Chapter 11, I think under counties, under the home rule, there might be something that talks about specific initiative and referral for counties.
Because if we're just reiterating it, it seems redundant to put it in
Yeah,
twice.
let me look here, she's got, Candy's on top of things like she always is. We got Chapter 11 sitting. Guess I don't see anything here doing it. Where's old 5 at? Oh, sure.
This is the same one.
I honestly don't know. I don't see it anywhere.
And so in that way, I mean, if it doesn't list it, or if we can't find it, then we probably shouldn't expect people who
Yeah.
want to initiate or refer to expect them to be able to
Yeah.
find it. So
The only thing I would say is, in reading this again, we have it laid out how you, everything is talking about referral, a referendum. There's no specific language speaking to initiative. It's just talking about referral. Basically, I think it would just be, like, again, that comes back to implied powers.
Well, and I think the reason we wrote so much about referendum is because it affects things that are enacted.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
so-
why you need that second paragraph, but essentially, it's just basically, you would have to say, like you would write on that third paragraph, each ordinance or resolution referred or initiated to the electors shall be placed upon the ballot.
Yeah. I think that that's a reasonable thing to have.
That next one would be a referendum petition, is still a referendum petition. Then on the back page, it's the committee of the petitioners, if you have a problem. Each petition shall have printed on it, thereon, referral of county ordinance. And then you almost just need to say, there needs to be something that says initiative, basically, I don't know how you write it. Yeah. Yeah, it basically says you could have
Right.
amendment, repeal, adoption, initiative, referral of ordinances and resolutions. The other thing I noticed here too is at the bottom of this paragraph, where it says each petition shall have printed thereon. It says, the last sentence,
City.
it says city, should say county,
Right.
because,
The end of that paragraph.
yeah, at the bottom of each petition, the circulator of the particular petition shall sign an affidavit affirming the signers thereto are known to be qualified electors of the city.
Not that county.
Yeah, it should be county.
So then, basically everything is staying as is in Article 5?
Well, we've got a couple of minor revisions, but the
Well,
the
just-
question is, I would say the second to last paragraph there, where it says each petition shall have printed thereon referral of county ordinance. We may wanna have something in there basically saying, like, initiation of county ordinance, or, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Cause I don't think. And then to add being referred or initiated to the end of that sentence.
Rodney, do you think putting, instead of doing like, is one of your objections that the 300 number is too low?
Well, in one sense, yes.
Do you think it'd be more reasonable to maybe make it 500 or something like that, so we'd have a little bit higher bar to clear?
Well, that's my thought, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I wouldn't have any problem with going to like a 500, because what it comes down to is this, it's, if you read it here, we're giving you 30 days to get it done too. from the time we elect petitions to when they get handed in, 30 days to get 500 signatures is, again, it's doable, but it's a lot of work. So I think
But if
that's,
it- if
that's a
it-
good number though.
If the, I mean, if the thing that you're working on is worthy, you might get that 500 pretty quick.
Yeah, it's possible, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't matter, because I don't think we're gonna come across the lower bound anyway.
I don't think we are either,
I
but
mean-
there's always that possibility that we do lose population in the
Or,
future.
or nobody votes for some reason.
Yeah, or for some reason we have a gubernatorial election where maybe
Which
the,
is-
maybe
which is
they
how we
run
got- which is how we got to
unopposed
the
or
number.
something.
You know, what, like, just like if you use the primary
Examples, yeah.
statistics
Yeah.
example right now, you know, that it wouldn't even take this much.
If we continue to have apathy, yeah, maybe we'll get less and less people to vote, and then the general will, at some point, yeah. I would have no problem with raising that number a little bit, just so we can, you know, if that makes you
Well, I
more
guess
comfortable
I
with
guess
it.
I would, because I had a party one day and said, well, why do you know, they must evidently read this or whatever, about 300. Well, they said, you know, you could get 300, that wouldn't be hard. And
Well, it's only 10 a day, I mean, yeah, that's not super.
it's doable,
Yeah, it's easily doable.
just no question about it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't matter if it's 300 or 500, but, I mean, to get on the ballot, to run for something, it's not that high,
No,
you know? And that's something that ends up on the ballot. My name, your name, whoever's name ends up on the ballot, that's one more thing a person has to choose. And the bar for that is lower.
Whatever.
yeah, but that's set by the state. You know,
Yeah, I
so
understand,
it's
I
just
understand,
gotta
but
be
I'm just trying to, you know,
No, I know
again,
what you're saying.
to me, it makes no difference if it's 300 or 500, because I don't think it'll matter, but I only say that. But yeah, if we want to change it to 500, that's fine, I've certainly got no issue with that.
You figure out how many he needs in a day, and then
Like 17, right?
You need like 20, yeah, 15 a day, 15, 17 a day. And the minimum number of people on a petition committee are 3. So if you had hypothetically 3 people decide something needs to be changed, they could go out and each of them can get 8 signatures a day, or 5, 6 signatures a day, for 30 days, they can get it done.
Well, yeah, then let's change it.
all right, 500 it is.
Well, is there a motion? That will take a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to move it to 500.
Okay, there's a
I'll
motion.
second that.
And a second. Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion carries.
And then the only other thing would be, you know, like you said, language to make sure it includes, you know,
Yeah.
so that where it says each petition shall have printed thereon, we could just put referral / initiative.
Right, but then we'll have to kill the parentheses. Because if you read that literally, it would mean that every referendum or initiation would have to say referendum / initiation.
No, I know, yeah, I know.
So,
Yeah, how would we write it so you can do it?
well, you either list it as 2 quotes, where you'd say, you know, in the case of a referendum, it would say this, or in the case of an initiation, it would say this, or you kill the quotes and say, printed thereon referral / initiation of county ordinance or resolution providing for.
No, so you're just saying, basically,
But you just have to kill the quotes.
just kill the quotes and then put referral
/
/ initiative?
yeah,
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because the quotes make it all inclusive.
right.
Grammar. Okay.
Okay, so then it would read, every petition shall have printed thereon referral / initiation of county ordinance or resolution providing for. Well, I guess we must have been able to do it that way because in parentheses there, I mean, in parentheses, no, yeah, parentheses, call not in quotes, parentheses, it says or resolution, and that would not be included, potentially. He's
Yeah.
saying for ordinance, so you could, instead of saying slash, you could leave the,
Well, you could just
leave
put,
the quotes and put in parentheses
yeah,
or
or
initiation.
initiation, yeah, just do it that way. Yeah, I think that's, and then, also, down at the bottom there, it would say, and shall accurately identify somewhere as the true nature of the enactment or portion of enactment being referred or initiated.
Right, yep, and I have that listed too. So if, and then just change his last
And then
part to
that'll-
county.
Yeah, and then that'll basically fix it, that'll be exactly what we need then. And then wasn't the one on the first page?
Yes,
we had to be
on the third paragraph, each ordinance or resolution referred
Or
to
initiated.
or initiated.
Initiated by the
Yes.
electors, yeah. See what we're talking about here, Candy?
Well, we're gonna have to do these as different
I was
ordinances.
like,
So let's do the first.
To or initiated by.
Right, so let's have a motion to change the third paragraph of Article 5 to include each ordinance or resolution referred to or initiated by the electors. And then while we're doing that, do we want to change it to 60 days?
I guess that's, what do you think, Candy? The state statute is 64.
Do we want to change it to 64?
Well, in my mind, it seems to make sense to keep them all.
I'm just trying to figure out why I don't recall the conversation, why we decided to go with 45.
I don't know, so I guess I don't recall it either.
Well, I do remember why. It was because the previous paragraph says that any ordinance is placed on hold during the time that it's under question.
Okay.
And so basically, I think our rationale was, you don't want, if something's an important ordinance, you don't want it to be held up for like forever. That was the discussion I remember having.
Okay.
And why did you go 45 enough? The 45 days doesn't really match with anything.
I don't remember, we'd have to go look it up, but it really doesn't matter to me if we change it either.
Candy, what are your thoughts though? Because it's whatever works best for you.
go back. See where we started. Didn't we have the discussion about it being like 2 months? The consensus was that that was like too long.
I think so, but I'm just trying to recall why we went to 45 days. Arbitrary.
No, because I think at one time, while it was at 30, and then that wasn't enough time.
Oh, so we just kind of split it? And just agreed for
That's-
45?
That's why we did that, yeah.
That must have been
You know,
the next
because
election.
Cass County doesn't, well, it just refers to a sentence, but it doesn't,
Yeah, my
it
only,
doesn't give a,
yeah, my only concern is by the statement that is made there. If somebody refers or initiates something after the 64 days, but before 45 days before the election, in that 20-day window, we have to put it on that next election, you don't have a choice.
Right.
And at that point, ballots are already printed.
Yeah,
So you would almost have to have a special ballot then, that you would have to hand count.
That's making it more work.
that makes a lot of work for you.
Mhm.
So that's my only concern with it.
I'm happy that if we change it so that it's workable, but
And I just wanna make sure that if we're ever gonna vote on things, that they're just at the regular elections as much as is humanly possible to defer cost. Because, you know, you don't have a bunch of
Getting
extra.
back to this, so we're trying to deal away with any special election.
Yes, as much as is humanly possible, because they're expensive to hold.
Right, so then maybe that should be so many days before the primary, so many days, make that one standard number.
Yeah,
Or one- I shouldn't say standard, but just make that one number.
Mhm.
So that if that ever arises, that it can be, it could be even put on the primary ballot that way.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah, so the next election occurring after the certain amount of days, so that's, it would be, my inkling would be to say it's 64 in state law, correct, Andy? So if you put 65 days, because you're gonna need it the day before you need to get it in, right? So anything 65 days before the primary goes on the primary, anything 65 days before the general goes on the general,
and something
And then-
20 days before the
yeah.
general goes on the primary.
and then if it's on the off year, so after the general happens, so say like 2019, say it were to occur, then the county commission at that point would have the question of, should we hold a special? Or should we just wait until the 2020 primary in order to vote on it? Depending on how important they feel the ordinance or initiative is.
Yeah.
Which I think is reasonable,
So do we need a motion to change that to 65?
I would say so.
Oh,
Yes,
motion.
but, okay,
Oh,
so
sorry, go ahead.
will you amend that motion to include the change or initiated by in that motion as well? Since we're gonna basically be affecting this paragraph,
Yeah.
would you make the motion to change the paragraph to say, each ordinance or resolution referred to or initiated by the electors shall be placed on the ballot by the county auditor at the next election occurring 65 days after the filing of sufficient petitions, or at a special election called by the Board of Commissioners, whichever shall occur first. Will you make that motion to change it to that?
I will make that motion to change it to that, but I don't remember all that wording.
Yeah,
Candy's
I was
got
just like, just go back to the first sentence.
it. Candy's got it. You got it written down?
Each ordinance or resolution referred or,
Referred
Referred
to
to
or
or
initiated by,
initiated by.
okay,
and then 65 instead of 45.
Yep.
Those are the only two things, I just read the whole paragraph.
okay.
You got it?
So to strike and replace that paragraph with that wording as stated.
Yes, I make that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Then the next one that we talked about changing would be the second to last paragraph, or if we're counting, I think it's the third, fourth, fifth, sixth paragraph. My understanding of the changes would be to add, in parentheses after referral or initiation, close parentheses, and at the end of that first sentence to say referred or initiated, and then to change city to county. Those three changes is what I understand.
Referred, at the end of it, it's referred or initiated.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. I'll make that motion.
Okay,
Those changes.
there's a motion, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Are there any other changes that need to be made to the home rule charter?
Second here. Just a question, that first paragraph on the page, the county auditor shall pass upon each petition. How do you read that language? What do you think it means?
County auditor?
On Article 5?
Yes, it'd be that second page, what
Yeah.
Article 6 is on. The county auditor shall pass upon each petition. word pass is kind of a strange word to have in there. Shall approve each petition?
Well, I suppose pass would mean that just that she's got everybody as a legal voter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but pass is kind of an interesting word to use.
Yeah, we could probably use a more clear word, shall examine.
Shall examine and approve each petition.
Well, no, not approve, because the rest of it says, and if the auditor finds it is.
Oh, okay, good, yeah. Yeah, correction or amendment.
I think pass is
I think pass
is appropriate word for what they're trying to word.
Yeah, I think
That's
so
the
too.
wording of Morton County.
Is it? Okay, so if that's the wording elsewhere, I find that it's just kind of a strange, you don't see that word used that way very often, that's all.
I mean, that makes a difference.
So in other words, you're gonna pass over it, you're gonna look at it,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna say, this is good, you got all your stuff, just like you do
Maybe
with.
pass upon would be like to review.
Yes, essentially. Basically, you're gonna do exactly what you do when we hand in our petitions, where it's like, okay, yeah, you got all your stuff in a row, these are all good, all the signatures are good, you're good to go. So whenever they bring it in,
Yeah, no, I mean, either way, it doesn't matter.
it'll
if
be
it's
5 days for
tomorrow or
correction or
later.
amendment. So basically, there's no review process for the auditor or anything to approve an initiative or a referral. It's on the people to make sure that they do it as is written in the home rule.
Right, so the auditor doesn't have to do anything to bring it into line, he just has to say this isn't in line.
Yeah, so they can bring it, so if anybody wants to initiate or refer, they'll just write it up as substantive as it's here, and then they'll bring it in and say, is this good to go? And then you take it out.
Right.
If you're smart. Otherwise, you could just write it up and go get signatures and then bring it in and then the auditor could go, no, that's not right.
Right.
And then you just did all that work for nothing and it gets tossed. All I'm saying is, you know, like at the state level, if you want to initiate or refer, the Secretary of State approves the petition before it and the wording before it circulates.
Hmm.
But here, we're not requiring the approval before circulation, we're putting the onus on the people that want to get it referred
Which I think is
or
fine.
initiated to come in and make sure that it's okay with the auditor, and the auditor says, this passes muster, and the auditor, under her purview, could say to the state's attorney, this pass purview. They can have them, and then, okay, we're good, go and start collecting signatures. And you'd have to do it somewhat quickly because you're on that.
Right, but I think it's fine to do it the other way. I mean, although the only thing that would bring that calls to mind is this. If we don't have you approve it first, and I'm not saying we have to switch, but if we don't have you approve it first, then somebody could go out and collect signatures and then write in what they wanted. You understand what I'm saying? And you wouldn't know. Or you know, or they could take, and you could say this isn't right, and they could say, what's wrong with it? You could say, well, it doesn't meet this, this, and this. They take a pen and just write that in on top of it, which if you're trying to be legal about it, should then need to be recirculated amongst people, because they would still need to approve it.
Yeah. and
So
then-
that's probably the rationale for why, so I don't
and,
know.
and that's what I'm thinking too, because say for instance, we're saying you have 30 days to refer. How long do you have if you want to initiate? Is it open-ended to collect
I think so.
signatures?
I think so.
Or is it 30 days? Or
Well,
is it?
but how does it, oh, well, for an initiation, I mean, that's an entirely new thing. So I think people, if we leave it the way it is, they should have as long as they want, but if they need to approve it through the auditor first. You understand what I'm saying?
I do, but you know, I'm just thinking about how initiation and referral work at the state level. If you want to initiate something, it has to be within one cycle. You know, so like if the Secretary of State approves an initiative, then it has to be in the year that the election is to be held. Usually, or in that cycle at least, to collect enough signatures. So if you don't get enough signatures by 64 days, previous to the general or the primary that you want to put it on,
Right.
all those signatures then are null and void.
Right, because in a hypothetical situation, which probably would never happen, you could be slowly collecting signatures
For
for your
years.
initiation for 10 years.
Yeah.
Until you had enough, and then you could call
Yeah, and that's what I'm
for
saying.
something truly crazy.
Yeah, and that's where I have a concern. Is
Okay.
because you could sit there and collect signatures for perpetuity, basically. So I don't know how you'd word it accordingly, but again, this all comes down to, we're doing all this, and we basically took all this language verbatim from other,
Yeah,
and they've never had a problem. So if we're putting in all these stops, I think we're protecting ourselves pretty
Yeah.
doggone well. In terms of making sure that if something is gonna be referred or initiated, it's gonna be something that people really, really want, or
I
really,
would
really
love to
dislike.
talk to somebody from one of theirs and say, did you beat your heads against the wall as much as we are?
Talk to somebody else, you're
Yeah,
curious?
One of their, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they probably did too.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope so, otherwise we're taking their words verbatim for no reason at all.
We're just trying to make it hard, that's just, it's our job. All kinds of things you haven't thought about. Go back and read this real quick.
How are we on the timeline? I mean, we're good, right? I mean, as far as when we need to get it to
County commission.
and how
I
hold
think
our meeting.
as long as we have the hearing within a month, we should be fine.
No, I think we're still okay.
We're still
Because,
good on our
because
timeline.
at the hearing, we'll call a vote
And
board
our
assembled to
hearing has to
recommend
be
No.
when? When do we have to have our hearing?
Well, we can still make changes after the hearing.
Right,
We can, but unless, I mean, we can also, right, because if it's a hearing, there should be a quorum of the board present.
Yeah, we could at that point. if
We could
wanted.
decide, and then we could also choose to dissolve at the end of the hearing as well.
yeah.
So we could vote to refer it to the county commission or not, and dissolve the committee or not at the hearing.
So,
Or we could just have the hearing and then end the hearing and then make changes in a meeting just like this again, like we.
Right, which would be what my thought would be on how to do it, but
Yeah, that's where I was kind of figured we'd take input at the hearing, we'd make notes, we'd come back into this room, we'd talk about how the hearing went, we'd make any changes accordingly. And then at that point, one meeting should be enough unless something crazy happens in the hearing, to basically make the changes necessary, and then at that point, we'll decide, should we push it forward or should we?
right.
so when are we looking at for a hearing?
That's next on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
But just to make sure that we're all done amending this before we move to that. Adam, to be honest with you, I still feel comfortable with it. Because at the very worst, it's one more item on a ballot, and if it was really that insane, it's not gonna pass.
Well, you might think it would. My only concern is that, just timeline, how long you have to collect for, because we've got a good setup for referral. 30 days, you gotta get it done, good. But the initiative, with an open-ended number, you can collect and collect and collect and collect and collect. That's kind of problematic.
What if we just said, for an initiated item to be considered valid, you have it in one sentence. For an initiated item to be considered valid,
All signatures must be collected within however many days.
right, but the only way that you could prove that happened is to say you have to file that you're collecting signatures with the auditor. So the auditor doesn't need to approve what it says, just to say you have to give notice to the auditor that you're collecting. And that it has to be done within one cycle. So that way you would know if it was done in one cycle, because they would file with you and say, I'm collecting signatures for XYZ initiated measure. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense, it's just a matter of, how do you write it, so it's not too.
Well, I do think you could do it in one sentence.
I think that's how that's supposed to read though. On that, the county auditor shall pass upon each petition, and if the auditor finds it insufficient, the auditor shall notify the committee of the petitioners and allow 5 days. So I think what this is saying, how I read it, is that the committee for the petitioners comes up with their petition and writes it off of this paragraph, and then they bring that to the county auditor and she has to do a pass-through on it. And she either says, yes, you're okay to circulate, or no, make changes.
Well, and that could be the best.
That's how I read that. Not, and then when the art, and then she has to check the signatures when they come back, just like she would for anything. But before the petition, so basically it's a built-in way for the auditor to know somebody's either attempting to refer or initiating, and making sure that their language is correct. That's how I read it, at least. And then so if that's how I read it and I'm correct, and I'm not saying I am, then all you would need is to say you only have so many days to collect signatures for an initiative.
Well, is there a ruling on that?
I don't think there is, no.
I mean, we could add a clause to that, just to clarify it, if that's what we want it to mean, to say, prior to the collection of signatures for petition, the county auditor shall pass upon each petition, and if the auditor finds it insufficient, the auditor shall notify the committee of the petitioners in all but 5 days for correction.
So you're just saying prior to what now?
Prior to the collection of signatures.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, that clarifies, I think that clarifies the clause perfectly. And then it's just a matter of, do we think we should allot a certain amount of days or a certain time frame to collect for an initiative? That's all. You're fine with a cycle, basically, but how do you write it so it's, you know, how about 1 year? Again, like I said, we're going through this, and apparently nobody's ever used this route anywhere, because apparently nobody's ever asked these questions. Because the auditor would be in charge of coming up with the petition, you know, with the sheets that would have to be signed and everything, obviously, because that's applied. So you'd have to have a signature, you'd have to have it just like the petitions are now, where you'd have it written on the first page what you're signing, and then the back page, name, address, signature, date, just like the state's petition, so that you can.
The only thing that I then question is if it really does mean what you think it means, Adam, then why have a 5-day window for correction or amendment? Well, I mean, what would it matter if they could come back in a year and start the process again? You understand what I'm saying?
That's a good question.
So that's why I initially interpreted it the other way, which is when the signatures are presented, along with the petition, if something's wrong, they have 5 days to amend or correct.
That's a good point.
That's why I interpreted it that way.
Okay. So then
Well, you
basically.
could take that 2 ways, because you could have it, one, I guess I can't explain it, but I mean, I can see there's, you can look at that 2 ways about that. They can bring in a petition to, and do it. Well, I guess I just can't get my,
I know, I get what, I know, it's basically the question of, is it beforehand or at the end?
yeah.
Basically, yeah. And your reading is basically at the end, and that's why there's a 5-day window to make corrections. So basically, if you screwed up on your petitions, you gotta hurry up and go out you get 5 additional days to go out and try to fix your screw up.
Right.
Versus what I was and I think you might be right there, because that 5 days, I didn't really think about that. Versus saying, you have 5 days to fix it, well, what's it matter? You
Right.
can just rewrite it and come back again. Because we're never gonna tell you you can't do something,
Right.
you know?
Which is my thought. And
So
the
I
next-
think you're right.
But then the next thought is this: if we leave that paragraph as written, and you allow 5 days for correction or amendment, and they initially brought it to the auditor 65 days before, and you give them 5 days, then you still printed the ballot, but they presented it, you understand what I'm saying? So is it approved by the auditor? It's 65 days after?
It's each ordinance or resolution referred to the elector shall be placed upon the ballot by the auditor at the next election occurring 65 days after the filing of sufficient petitions. Sufficient petitions means that the auditor still has to clear the petitions. She has to pass upon them and clear the petitions.
Okay, okay.
But so if they wait and drag their feet till day 65 previous to the next election,
They aren't gonna get it
they're
on.
not gonna get it on that ballot, because then the auditor would say,
It's not sufficient.
these
Okay,
aren't
that's
sufficient.
fine. As
If
long
these
as-
ballot,
as long as you know that.
these petitions are not sufficient, you have 5 additional days to get them fixed. And if they have 5 days to get them fixed, they go get them fixed, but then you
It's
get
not on the
rolled,
ballot.
then you get rolled either to the next primary or general, or the commission here, if they deem it necessary, can hold a special at some point.
Okay, that's fine.
That's how I would read it. I still ask the question of, should we have some type of a time frame for gathering signatures for an initiative? So it's not like just open-ended forever. I think a time frame is reasonable. I don't know what the time frame should be, but I think it's reasonable. So do we want the auditor to approve the language previous to it going out to is the other question.
Well, so the only thing that I think is this, functionally speaking, if you're gonna put a time limit on it, then you need, because it's the only way you ever know whether it was true or
Yeah,
not,
when it started.
to start, you know when it
To
started.
start the clock, basically, because we already know the clock is started on a referral because the ordinance goes into effect, the 30-day clock starts.
Right, so you've got it on the record that the county commission did something how many days ago, right?
Yes.
So
Whereas
that's,
the initiative, you're gonna have to have an approval to start the clock. And that's kind of how the state functions, because if you wanna refer something at the state level, after the law is passed, you have 75 days to collect signatures to refer. But if you want to initiate, the Secretary of State has to approve the petition before it goes up. That's the same function. So it's just a matter of how you write that.
Well, see, I'm gonna just use this, if you had 5 people out here and they decided that they were gonna get a petition to, I'm not saying what it is, but
No, just anything.
just anything. They could just write that up, take a piece of paper, write, this is what we're gonna do, and get signatures. And if they come in with the certain amount of, the legal amount of signatures, and brought it to the auditor, it's coming to her, so to speak, cold turkey. Is that legal?
I think if we read it, if we wrote the home rule charter that way, then yeah, but if we choose to write it a different way, then no.
In state law, if you're trying to initiate or recall, no, that is not legal. Those all have to be approved by the Secretary of State. So like even a recall effort at the state level, you have to have a sponsoring committee, the sponsoring committee has to be approved by the Secretary of State, and then the recall effort can occur. Or the referral effort can occur. The initiative is the same way, you have to have I think it's like 32 members have to be on the sponsoring committee, and then the Secretary of State has to approve the language for the petition to go out. So there's no cold turkey basically. You know when something's happening. You know something is getting circulated before it gets circulated because the Secretary of State says, yes, this works, or no, go back to the drawing board and fix your language. Basically. But at that point,
Okay, then, if the way this reads, the county auditor shall pass on each petition, well, does that have to go to the Secretary of State?
no. That's all gonna be handled in-house, because the auditor is essentially our Secretary of State. How's that make you feel, Candy? Basically, that's why we need to, so basically what it's saying right now is, how I understand it is.
Okay, I think,
Go ahead.
No, I think we can add in everything we want to add within one sentence. Initiation petitions must be presented to and be approved by the county auditor, and signatures must then be collected and filed with the county auditor within 1 year. You good with that?
I think that's reasonable, because then it's still, the 64-day clause previous still applies.
Right.
Because otherwise it's gonna get on that general. So it'll give you, basically, if you want if you wanna start collecting for the primary, for instance, you start collecting in November or whatever to get on the June, and you don't have enough, you would still have that chance at the general. But if you still don't have enough signatures collected by 64 days prior to the general, then all of your signatures would then at that point expire, and you would have to restart because you're past your year by the time the general's done. I'm fine with that language. And the referral then, do we want the auditor to have to see how the referral's gonna be too, so we know there's a referral going on?
Well, if one's going on, you're gonna have to know the other one's going on.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
other
So
than we
I'm-
know there's a chance that you could refer in a 30-day time frame every time we pass an ordinance. So we know there's always that chance where an initiative could just come out of nowhere unless we've got stipulations.
Right.
But we could just write a sentence that says all language for referrals, for petition of or for referral of a ordinance or resolution all language must be approved by the auditor, you know, previous to collection or circulation for signatures. Again, that's all you need if you wanted to do the same thing on a resolution or on a referral. Just so basically the auditor will be the clearinghouse for any of those things that are happening, so we know if it's out there. And essentially, I think part of it
Well,
is,
but it already says that. The referendum petition shall, upon determination by the county auditor that such a petition is sufficient, suspend.
yeah, but that says that's when those are collected and it's sufficient. It's not saying that the auditor approves the language or approves the petition essentially.
Yeah, but a referendum petition is only ever going to say one thing, which is
Yeah,
undo
gonna say-
that
it's
thing.
gonna say referral of county ordinance blank, writing for blank, and then describe.
Right, so
Identify what it is.
to me, then it doesn't matter because it's gonna say that. And if it doesn't say that, then it doesn't work.
Well,
Because the only reason you gotta present an initiation to the auditor is so that the clock can start, is my understanding.
But my only concern is, it says it shall accurately identify and summarize the true nature of the enactment or portion of enactment being referred. So are we gonna require them essentially then to basically tack on whatever the ordinance or resolution is?
Right.
Or a
referral
summary of,
ordinance.
it, but that's what I'm saying, how do we know it's a good summary and everybody knows the same thing is being told to them once being referred to it? You know, that's all I'm saying.
Well, why not then have a county policy that all ordinances must be like adequately summarized? So then that way it's, that way any referendum on it, the summary would just be there for the county.
I don't think that's unreasonable.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're gonna pass an ordinance, you better be able to summarize the ordinance anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
But all I'm saying, if in lieu of the county having that policy, if you're asking people to make sure there's a good summary on there, shouldn't that be cleared by the auditor?
Maybe.
That's all I'm saying. I just like the auditor knowing when things are happening, because then if we know there's a possibility that something out there is being circulated, then at least we have a heads up that it could happen and we can plan for when it's gonna go on or a special or anything like that too. Just so we know what's going on more than anything. I mean, not to try to stop it or doing anything like that, but just information wise, basically. That way the auditor too knows, oh cripes, we're right up against it, and we just passed this ordinance.
See, but I'm of the opinion that if anybody's gonna refer an ordinance, they're gonna come in and talk to Candy and say, Candy, what does that ordinance actually say? Because I think I wanna get a referral going. I can't imagine hardly anybody just coming out of left field and said, hey, a week ago I saw on the video this thing and I've decided I'm gonna refer it,
I would hope people wouldn't do that either, but I'm just saying, you never know, people be crazy.
That's true. I mean, so then in that case, I mean, I don't know. I think just including that one sentence that I said adequately protects us for initiation. Now, whether or not it's referral,
Okay, I'm fine.
I mean,
Let's roll with it and see what happens. I think we've hashed
okay.
it out.
Now the question is where to put that one sentence.
Okay, how's it reading again?
Initiation petitions must be presented to and approved by the county auditor, and signatures must then be collected and filed with the county auditor within 1 year.
I would say that that should be paragraph 3, because paragraph 1 spells out the percentages, paragraph 2 says how you're gonna refer, paragraph 3 will say how you initiate, paragraph 4 then states the timeline, and then paragraph 5 and on state how it has to, what language has to be on.
So you think you should go Article 5, Paragraph 3?
Yeah, I think it's fine there.
Okay.
That would be my opinion, I guess, I don't know if there's better ways for it.
Okay, so then in that case, just to read what it would state if we chose, it would say, initiation petitions must be presented to and approved by the county auditor, and sufficient signatures must then be collected and filed with the county auditor within 1 year.
Everybody okay with that? I'll make a motion to add that, it's paragraph 3.
Start before the current sentence is there. I think it would make more sense, because the second one says when it would go on the ballot.
Well, no, I'm sorry, I did it myself.
So if it's in paragraph 3, which my understanding reads, each ordinance or resolution referred to or initiated by the electors shall be placed upon the ballot.
Oh, okay, yeah, I
So
see
put
what
it
you're saying.
before that sentence,
I
because,
was thinking it was just gonna be its own standalone sentence, like a new paragraph.
oh, you would just add it?
Yeah, because
Oh, that's
it's
fine.
talking about just the initiative.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
think it's just that one sentence should be its own,
Okay.
basically like a bullet point.
Yep, that's fine.
And then paragraph 3 currently becomes paragraph 4.
Okay, then that's fine. You have all what I just wrote there, Candy? Catch all that?
One more time.
Initiation petitions must be presented to and approved by the county auditor,
Okay, county auditor.
actually, can I break this into 2 sentences because I think it'll flow better? Period. Must be approved by the county auditor, period. Upon approval, sufficient signatures must then be collected and filed with the auditor within 1 year.
I like it. And it clears up what we're trying to do.
It just stops a big run-on sentence.
Yes. Nonsense.
So is it initiation or initiated petitions?
Initiative, right?
Initiative.
I don't think it matters too much as long as the idea's there. Want to get it right, but the idea's there.
Initiative petitions must be presented to and approved by the county auditor, period.
I hate to do this, but for grammar speaking, well, first let's finish that. Do you make that a motion?
Yeah.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. The last thing that I'll ask about Article 5 is, it says, its title is Initiative and Referendum. Is it not more correct to say Initiative and Referenda?
I don't know.
Because you would have, a referendum is on one thing. I mean, I don't think it really matters, but I just want to ask.
No, I say really what it is. I like referendum, but if we're going with it,
Okay?
we're going with it. Okay.
Okay, any other changes?
That'll work there.
Just repeat it one more time, make sure I got it.
Okay. Initiative petitions must be presented to and approved by the county auditor, period. After approval,
Upon approval.
upon approval, sufficient signatures must then be collected and filed
Okay, must then be collected
And filed.
and
with the county auditor within 1 year.
Got it.
hey man, I didn't get on
No,
that.
you did.
Perfect. All right, hearing no other changes to the home rule charter, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is scheduling a public hearing.
Well, say, going back, then, do we have to change anything in Article 8?
Oh, good question. Where's Article 8 now? Amendments and repeal. That's a good question.
Do we want to change it to 500?
I think since for continuity's sake, I agree we should change that one too.
No, we've changed it, the other is, we've gotta be,
Will you make that motion, Rodney?
I will make that a motion,
So
yeah.
go to 500 signatures instead of 3 then? Correct?
Yeah, well, what did we go with before?
500.
Okay,
I'll
yeah.
make, you make the motion, I'll second that we move to
Yeah.
500.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries.
Good catch.
Yeah, thank you, Rodney.
I missed it.
Okay, so scheduling a hearing.
How long do we need to advertise? Because we're gonna put it in the paper multiple times, correct? Would be the thought process.
Just the notice of public hearing?
Yeah, we don't have to put the whole, we don't have to print the whole home rule.
Just to notice that it's,
But upon Robbie's point, I think we need to advertise really, really well. Try our best to get as many advertisements out as humanly possible that's not gonna, break us basically. So paper, peddler, maybe do a public service announcement on the radio, because they'll do that for free. Probably the week leading up, just have them announce it, or at least 3 days previous or something, so we can get that out there.
I think, in my mind, we should have it on the 16th of July, which is a Monday.
16th? Okay. We talked the 17th at the previous meeting, but actually I think the 16th or, I might have a meeting that night, I think. Social services might be that evening. Yeah, I think social services is. The 17th, when we were talking previously, I think,
With commission meeting that week.
yeah, but I was thinking we could do it at like 7 o'clock afterwards, but we're gonna be budgeting before the meeting, so we'd be here all doggone night. So I don't think that would work very well. So I don't know if the 16th would work for me, being I might have, Ed and I probably have,
Or do we want to do Wednesday, July 18th?
I guess, what do we think the best day in the summer would be, so we can get the most people?
I'd say earlier in the week is better than later in the week.
Generally speaking. Obviously not Friday, not Saturday, not Sunday.
Thursday isn't a good day.
Thursday's not a great day, so basically we've got Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday is probably the best.
That would be my days, yeah.
And if we wanna get a public hearing done, if we do it like, say, the 18th, or, and I'll double check my social services schedule. Or like, maybe like the beginning of the next week, 23rd, 24th, something like that maybe.
That'd be fine. I guess it doesn't really make a difference as far as the county commission is concerned.
No, because just as long as, we want to give ourselves enough time when we get the public hearing done, that we as a committee can meet again, and then at that point, make a recommendation to the commission.
I thought we were gonna have to do that at the meeting after the home rule meeting, or the hearing.
Well, yeah, but we might have changes to make.
We're giving ourselves enough time if we do need to make.
Yes, that's my point. I want to have enough time, so say we have the hearing on the 18th or the 23rd or something, and we get a lot of feedback on one certain section that people really dislike a certain thing, they think it should be changed. Okay, fantastic. Then we can give ourselves enough time that evening to say, hey, can we all get together later this week or next week,
Right.
get the changes knocked out, and then we can make a recommendation to the commission, because I would like the commission to have it, from my chairman position, at least that first meeting of August would be nice. So that way, we can allow for discussion, and if we need to table it, because there's still some additional questions maybe at the commission level, we still have that second meeting in August.
It has to be done by the second meeting in August.
Essentially, yes,
Yes.
because unless we want to have a special. So I would like to have it on our table at the commission level at the first meeting of August, just so if there's any questions, we can answer questions as a whole. But then if you know, you and I are obviously well versed in it, because we've been in it the whole time. But the other three commissioners maybe would like more time after we answer some questions to really think it over if they want to put it on the ballot or not. And maybe then discern some feedback from the public as well. So then we would have that second meeting in August still, to make that final decision.
Yeah, well,
That's my
I
intent.
agree that's how long you could put it off, that's fine.
Yes. But I mean, if there's the possibility too, that in all honesty, we might get it done, recommend it, the commission could put it on the ballot on that first meeting of August, and then it'll be done. You know,
Mhm.
and if that's the case, fantastic, our work is done.
Okay, so do you wanna do Monday, July 23rd? Would you prefer that to the 18th as
Yeah,
Wednesday?
just let me, well, what do we got going on, 18th?
Because if we do it on the 23rd, we don't have, well, we do have enough time, but we don't have a huge amount of time before the next commission meeting.
Trying to think.
Don't crowd it,
Yeah,
because you might want to have, might have to have two meetings.
not possible. I don't wanna crowd it either, I think.
I mean, I think you're, when you're running it into the last days of July, you're getting down to the wire.
Just trying to think of, I don't have the 18th is, I think I'm supposed to be somewhere on the 18th, but I don't have to go. But I'm fine with the 18th, I guess, if we want to do it on the 18th, I just won't go to my other three days.
Okay, the 18th at 6 PM?
What time do we think is best, 6, 7?
For what?
For the
hearing.
public hearing. If we do it on
6
Wednesday, the 18th, what time of evening do you think would be best to start?
Oh, I would think 7 o'clock.
7? Okay.
7 or 6?
I think, yeah, 6 o'clock, people still eat
6
dinner and stuff
o'clock
like
is-
that, yeah. 7 o'clock on the 18th then, would be okay for a public hearing, that'll give us enough time to advertise, get it out there. That gives us enough time to the legal requirement of we need to be at least, what, 2 weeks out, so we'll keep it going.
What time did you say?
7 PM on the 18th?
Well, I would say the armory room would be my inclination. Why?
No, I just
I think,
for schedule, I mean,
no, for scheduling wise, I think in my personal opinion, the armory has far better acoustics than downstairs in that historical room or that big one down there, I can't hear a dog thing in that place.
let's see this.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say too is, in Carrie's thing here, the one thing we will have to have a meeting for, even if we decide to refer it to the commission, we won't at that point in time not be a charter commission anymore, because for proposals to adopt a home rule charter, the charter commission shall prescribe the form of the ballots. We actually have to come up with the language that goes on the ballot. And when I talked with Carrie about it earlier and Candy, we said, well, let's just pull the language and see what Martin put on and what Berkeley put on. And then we can kind of look, it'll at least give us a guideline for what we're looking for.
But that's pretty vague. I've got it in my
Oh,
notes.
here we go. Williams County has it right here. It says, shall Williams County adopt the home rule charter as published in the Williston Daily Herald on May 10th, 2006? Yes or no?
And
Pretty
I
simple.
have it in my notes to email the two.
But just so we have some ideas.
Yeah.
How we should do it. So, does that 18th work for you, Rodney?
I'm not just sure. I gotta have a little surgery on the 11th, and I might have to go back and get the stitches out on the 18th.
Would you prefer the 23rd?
No, you better hold it without, because I don't want to get it rushed it that close.
Okay. As long as you're comfortable not being there. just-
Well, I mean, I guess it's whatever I got.
Well, and in the armory, we can set it up and tape it too, so if you would like to watch.
I mean,
it
I don't know whether
obviously.
I gotta go to Fargo and back that day, so I don't know whether I can make it all one day.
Well,
I mean, you
Okay.
know, be that.
if you're okay with that, then. Okay,
I'm fine with that.
I'll
I'm
make-
fine with that because we're gonna have a meeting afterwards.
Okay, yeah, and
The only thing I'm not gonna hear is hear the input.
like I said, we can make sure that we tape it too, because I think it's good to tape that, and we should put it up too, and then you can make sure she gets you a copy recording or something so you can watch it. Or I can do it,
Boys can.
whatever. Just put it on Steve's plate. Well, I'll make the motion then that we
Well,
hold,
you can come in and watch it on the computer.
Yeah. I'll make the motion that we hold our public hearing and allow for advertising for the public hearing as well, for 7 PM, July 18th, in the Armory. Yes, the Armory works.
Okay.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Is there any other business that needs to come before the Home Rule Charter Committee? Hearing none?
Well, do we have to know when we're gonna have a meeting after that?
Sorry, will somebody make a motion that we hold the next Home Rule Charter Committee meeting after the hearing?
Well, do we wanna hold it just that night, or do we wanna?
Or do you want to kick it another day? We can do that too, that's fine.
I think I prefer just to, cause
Hello,
most of the time I like to think about what happened at like a hearing like that for at least a day or two before we make a recommendation.
okay, you want to do Monday the 23rd? Or I guess if we normally do it on a Wednesday, we can do it on Wednesday the 20th.
Wednesday the 25th?
Is that right?
Oh, I get.
Okay, I'll make a motion then that we hold our next home rule charter meeting.
Does that give us time?
I think it gives us plenty of time. Because our next, August, our first meeting in August is until the 7th. So if we hold a meeting the 25th, then we still have that whole next week if we do have to have a second meeting. So we could hypothetically meet again on August 1st if we had to that following Wednesday to finish stuff up and get the language right and everything, so.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we get
1:30?
1:30 PM, July 25th, we hold our next home rule charter committee meeting.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Is there any other business to come before the Home Rule Charter Committee? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Is there a second?
Second.
We stand adjourned.